Okay, so this is part 2 of our upcoming season considerations discussion. In part 1, we talked a lot about timing of sending out your brochure, and we heard from some venues that they had already sent theirs out and got a really positive response from their patrons, which was really encouraging. We also talked about if there was kind of a hard and fast deadline of what might be too late to send something out or get your brochure materials out or your season announced. And then we also discussed different considerations for still booking your next season if some folks were still doing that. And one of the things that came up was school shows, since we don't know what will be the status for schools and if they'll even be able to take field trips and all of that stuff. So it was very good discussion. And we did a part 2 because we had a lot of details that I felt still to cover. So some of the things that I had on my list, and if anybody has, other things, please feel free to bring them up as well. But some of the things that I had written down was ticket pricing. Is anybody rethinking their pricing structure based on the fact that, people are coming out of a financial hardship time and they may have less expendable income to spend on shows, and it might that impact our patrons that attend, or how many shows that they buy if they're season subscribers. Should we anticipate lower attendances next season because of that as well? And how does that impact our budgets or things like that? And then along with that, we started kind of the discussion of what will the new normal look like, and what kinds of things are we going to have to start thinking about to communicate to our audiences, as far as, and what will we have to do within our venues for social distancing, for cleaning, for possibly if we have to wear masks, our staffs, or also if patrons are going to be required to wear masks, as well as if there's still going to be limits on how many people can gather in the fall for those of us that have 1,000-seat theaters. What do we do with that if we already have seats sold that goes above the cap? So lots to talk about. If anybody has a preference on where we would like to start, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, we could probably start with, I can start it out with the ticketing discussion. I'm actually going into my 25th anniversary season, and so I was going to raise ticket price points just slightly because I'm bringing back the best of the best. So I've got the favorites of the past, and I thought all of these shows are great draws. So I was planning higher ticket prices, but now I'm going to pretty much stay status quo with what I was doing last year. So I'm not raising it, but I'm also not lowering it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. It may affect my budget a little bit because I spent what I spent on artist contracts, and so we'll kind of see. My hope is that I'll still draw, hopefully full houses and things, and the ticket price, we're talking $5 differential. So it's not a huge change from what I was budgeting or anticipating, but it may affect my bottom line. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And as far as the question of like anticipating younger I just looked at young auditorium. That's why I said younger. As far as anticipating lower audience attendance, I just have no idea. Because as is probably the case with many of you, my demographic is that 65 plus crowd, and so they are the ones that should rightfully be more careful coming out of quarantine, and they're still going to be possibly the higher risk demographic. So I just don't know if that group is going to feel still cautious to come out, or if they're going to be like, get me out of here, I want to come see a show. So lots of questions, but not a lot of answers. Anyone else have thoughts on the ticketing, the pricing, and that kind of stuff for your venue? Amy.
So I have a meeting with my team today. We're going to look at August through December and the shows that we have scheduled there. I don't think we're going to do anything with ticket prices because, again, we've announced our shows already. But we are going to evaluate the shows that we have in that time period and relook at our ticket goals, because we do think that we will probably be attracting smaller audiences than our initial goals. So we're going to be relooking at what our ticket targets are going to be for the fall and which shows we actually think are going to happen, because I have been getting some calls from a few agents asking to have backup dates for the spring in case we are not able to get back together in the fall.
Yep. Thanks, Amy. Kathleen?
Kathleen from Cedarburg. We are not going to be adjusting our pricing kind of for this. I mean, our brochure is in the works. So we're going to leave our prices as is. As far as attendance, I mean, I think we're probably anticipating lower attendance, not based on the price of our tickets. I don't think we really feel we're going to lose too many patrons for financial reasons. But we too have an older audience. So I think our numbers probably will be down. We're anticipating they'll be down just based on who's comfortable coming to a theater with 400 other people. So I think the pricing doesn't really worry us too much right now, but who wants to come and mingle and what we can do to make that safer is kind of where our discussion is. The one other thing we're talking about with pricing is, and I haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do this, but just coming out of finally having everything refunded, I think when we send out our brochure, which we're delaying by a couple weeks, we will let people know that, reserve your season tickets, but I'm not going to be processing payments until much later in the summer. I'd rather hold off on processing those payments than process them and then have to refund again. So I'm hoping even if we start collecting payments in June, everything we do over the summer, we don't have public hours in the summer because we have no performances in the summer, is via either telephone or mail. So we can take the information and let it sit. Very few people renew online. So that's kind of our plan for pricing.
Okay.
So.
Cool. Thanks, Kathleen. Anyone else about the pricing? Pat, go ahead. Oh, you're still on mute.
There. Okay, I'm from Verona, and we are not changing our prices, and we're still kind of in flux as to when we can even do our shows. We have some dates scheduled, but because we're at the high school, we have no idea what's going to happen with that. And another concern we have is finding enough dates in spring, because the high school will be packing the auditorium with their events that they're missing out on in the fall if they don't open. So I don't know what's going to happen with our season, but we do have dates. We only do 3 shows, so it's not a huge thing to find dates, but anyway, we'll wait and see what happens.
Pat. Yeah, that kind of goes into another, discussion point too, of the concept of being oversaturated in the fall. Is anybody worried about that with rescheduled shows from the spring into the fall on top of what you are booking for your upcoming season? Anybody concerned with that? No? Good. Kathleen?
And I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but the shows that we had to cancel in spring, the current shows we had to cancel, we were too far along for next year that we could not rebook them. So I have rebooked them for fall of 21.
Okay.
So we kind of had to skip a year for those performances and go to the next year, partially because of the same reasons. Being a school district venue, we just don't have the availability. It's not like we can just we have so little availability for our visiting artist series performances. We really can't add any extra. So that's what we had to do.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, that's the same with me. I think we had 3 or 4 shows we just canceled, and I have the intent of putting them into the 21-22 season, but I didn't even, reschedule dates yet, just because, again, like you say, with a school system, that has to come first with that calendar. Anyone else on anything with that? Otherwise, we can move on to kind of a shift gears. One thing I did listen to, I think it was on that that boot camp thing that I sent out to you guys. That was like a 4-hour, all different speakers and things. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I kind of pooped out after like 3 hours of it, but I did listen to a lot, and I do believe it's on, it's recorded somewhere. But one of the things that I wrote down from that I thought was a good idea was scenario planning on a quarterly basis, and establishing go, no-go dates. And I think that's kind of a good way for us to think about some things like, again, we just don't know what's coming down the pipe. So they suggested, just kind of planning, a couple months at a time, and then, and just then, kind of having go, no-go dates, or a plan, and then from there moving on. Because I think trying to look at the too big picture of the whole next season, we just don't know what it's going to look like. So I kind of thought that was good advice. And I appreciated that. Karen, go ahead. Here, let me unmute you.
Thanks. I just saw that. Yeah, I wanted to thank you for the boot camp thing. That was awesome. And it is recorded, so you can go back and just take it in chunks as you have time. So that was good. I think that you're right to be concerned about overpopulating events in the fall. The challenge is, and I know this is probably why you brought it up, there's no crystal ball to know when and what does too much look like, and when will people be willing to buy, and how much will they have in their budget to do that. So I'm hearing concerns about that too, but I'm not hearing any kind of, here's how we're addressing that. It's just there's no map right now. So people are just following their guts and going there. I'm going to have to get off from lurking in the background in about 10 minutes, but I did want to, can I just make a couple plugs for something right now?
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. One is on May 6th, Arts Wisconsin and the Arts Board is doing a resource session on the arts and elder care. And I know that a number of presenting organizations and other arts groups in each of your communities has a mission that is really interested in connecting with the elders in your community. We're gonna have stuff on our websites on that, and I'll send something specifically out. I bet Ann will too, to everybody to let them know. But please spread the word far and wide. We're gonna have Ann Basting, who is one of the most influential people in elder care and the arts in the world, actually, leading that session, 10 o'clock on May 6th. And I also wanted to go yay and Cats for getting that Event Safety Alliance reopening guide out to you guys so quickly. I've been going through it as well. I think it might be really interesting, Lonnie, to see if people want to have some time with it and then devote maybe part of a session to actually going through it and saying, what do you guys think? I mean, what do you consider due diligence here? And spending some time with that. We are looking all over the place for reopening guides. I shared Alabama's sort of more broadly stated recommendations. States are starting to come out with them. We're collecting them as quickly as we can, and we'll put them on the website. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there. And also, it looks like, you didn't hear it from me, but you probably heard it already from Arts Midwest, they're exploring the possibility of a virtual conference as they try to figure out what all of their options are. And so it will be interesting to hear and have you guys give your input on what might be particularly helpful if that is the kind of format that they're going to go for. So, all right, that's it from me. Thanks. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for that. Will you be a link for the May 6th 10 a.m. session?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, and thank you again, Anne, for that safety guide. I think that's a really great idea. I think that I for one probably would like to go through that and have some discussion on it, because I think for me personally, having some kind of plan or guide or something will be helpful for me in my venue, because I'm part of the college. And so I'm sure the college is going to come up with certain guidelines and things that's going to be more applicable to students and classes, but they're not, you know, sometimes my lovely board of directors is not always in my world and doesn't think in terms of performances and things. So I think that will be good for me to be kind of ready with something to communicate to those folks once we get back in session, if that happens. My college has said we are bound and determined to open if it is at all possible and legal and safe in the fall. It's our goal to get students back on campus, but safely. You know, safety is for sure the goal, but they definitely are not going to try to do virtual learning for another semester if it's at all possible. So that's kind of where they've taken a stand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think as much as we can be consistent across our venues, that will do a lot for the comfort of our patrons visiting our venues. So I feel like we're on a united front in terms of their comfort and safety in visiting our entertainment venues. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. That's a good point. Consistency. Woohoo. Any other just, I don't know, random discussion points or responses to Karen's announcements or things? I mean, I know we're all very eager to read through that safety guide. And I do think that will prompt yet another session like this. So I'm very thankful for that, because I don't have to come up with a topic on my own then. Sally, go ahead.
Just going back to your comment, Lonnie, about taking just a few months at a time, how would that impact our ticket sales to our season ticket holders? I mean, is that going to end up being a mess if we end up, you know, they're talking about this possibly getting worse in the winter again. How is everybody handling that if we sell season tickets and then end up canceling shows again?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, because there's also the fear of a resurgence in the fall, you know, once people get back out and about, that, you know, in certain areas, especially for those of us in the Milwaukee area, we're the we're the hot zone. So, you know, that's definitely a concern. Yeah, like you say, selling subscriptions or series packages and then having to cancel part of the shows. Anybody have any thoughts on that, or plans that you've already kind of thought through? Sandy, go ahead.
Well, we just had a board meeting yesterday, and my board decided on having a season that starts in January, not eliminating the possibility in the fall, but for those subscribers that are coming back in January, they still get the subscriber discount if we're able to do a show in the fall. So the fall shows would be more like drop-ins rather than part of a season. So that's how we decided to handle it.
Interesting. Thanks for that, Sandy. Anyone else have thoughts on refund policies as well? If you sell subscriptions, you know, have you thought about if we get to fall and, well, and then, you know, my thought is, what if you start up in September and everything goes okay and you're able to safely do a show in September, but then we have this resurgence and so October and November are canceled. And so you have this just hole in your season. You know, I mean, I think the simple answer is yes, you would probably just have to refund those tickets at the season price, you know, at the series ticket price, if you cancel the shows. Any other thoughts though on that?
We are thinking, we only have one show in the fall. This is Verona, but we have already talked to the presenter to see if they would be willing to move it to January if necessary. And we're looking at some dates.
Okay.
The rest of the season will be in the spring.
Okay.
But if we were to refund, wouldn't it be wise to have something in there for the costs of presenting some some portion of that we would keep, not refund the entire ticket. I don't know. That's just my thought.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and that's a question too. Then do you communicate that to your patron that if you are going to sell tickets, it is with, you know, either it's a hard and fast no refund policy even if the show is canceled, or if the show is canceled, it's a partial refund because there's certain costs that are associated with getting you up to that point. So yeah, great questions, Kathleen, and then Lindsay.
This is interesting because some of the things that are being said I hadn't thought of, but what we found was when we canceled our March show, we were very quick to refund because we were only a week out. When we got to the point that we knew we had to cancel our May show, we gave patrons the opportunity to donate their refund back to us, which a lot of people did. I mean, it was, in fact, I hate to say this, but it's kind of amusing now. I said, I think we almost probably did better financially by canceling the shows than we would have presenting the shows. Would have much rather had the shows. But I think that concept of buying tickets, refunding, donating is going to get old pretty quickly for patrons. I mean, I think they did it this time in May because everyone was kind of thinking, oh, it was a one-time thing. But I think that that's not going to be something we can continue for all of our shows for next year. So it's very interesting how some people are delaying their season till January. Who knows if that's going to be a better option? Or, you know, I don't know. I appreciate the conversation because I don't know what the answer is, but I think subscribers or patrons donating their refunds is not something we can count on over and over and over again. That's just my thought.
Thanks, Kathleen. Lindsay, and then Karen.
Hi, everybody. Lindsay from River Arts Inc. in Prairie du Sac. I think along the lines of what you said, just about being transparent. You know, none of us had a choice in the refunds that we maybe had to make right now or in the last month, or even coming up, but shows that already had ticket buyers. So we recommended or asked if they would consider a donation, exchange, and then the last option was a full refund because we had never mentioned that it would be without the fees, but obviously we didn't get reimbursed for like the fees from our ticketing software or anything, so we just ate those costs. But as we're building our brochures for next season, we're just going to make sure that any new tickets that are sold, they'll still have those options. If they are in the position where they could donate, great. If they could exchange for tickets for a future show, it'll be the full value of what they already paid because we don't incur new costs from that. And then if they wanted a refund, it will just deduct like our ticket fee out of that. And just tell them up front and then they can make that decision.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, I kind of like that concept of, you know, if you are going to maybe only give a partial refund, if you offered, you know, a store credit or a gift certificate for the full amount, then people, you know, have an incentive to take that versus a partial refund. So that's a great idea. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, I think transparency, as you said, is really going to be important. And I think as we approach this new world, because it's not going to be the same, even though our operating manuals are for what it's been like so far, we're writing the new ones now, or you guys are, as you go forward. One of the ideas is to have the link that says, this is what it costs us to do this service with you and for you. And here, you know, and so people can look and say, oh my gosh, there is a ticketing software fee that they have to pay. So that idea of donating, Kathleen, I think, I mean, I hear what you're saying about not counting on that as people's first go-to, but it might be for some of them. They might be so attuned to the fact that nonprofits are so, you know, seemingly fragile in this time that they are getting used to the idea of doing that. They're not going to do it to every ticket, but I think it's going to be really important for everybody to have donate as the first option. And then, you know, clearly they can have whatever refund you guys feel you can swing, and you'll put it up front so they know that. I also think that people are going to be waiting until the day of, you know, to buy tickets, because they're all expecting this kind of, right, So maybe not the day of, but the week before or whatever, because they're going to fear that there's going to be another bubble. And so how you guys put that into your planning, yeah. So that's all I had to say. Good to see you guys. See you next week, I hope.
Thanks
Bye.
again, Karen.
Yep.
Yeah, and in addition to, you know, what we've talked about, transparency, I think what's going to help all of us is if we are going to maybe not be so quick to give refunds, specificity on what our costs are, why we aren't able to necessarily offer the refund, or why it's imperative that we get the ticket price as a donation. I remember a long time ago, I got it. I used to do 5K races and things like that. And I got an email from one of the race directors explaining all of their costs, like bullet point by bullet point, like what they have to pay to close down the roads, what they have to pay to set up this, what they have to pay to the city, what they like. And it was just so specific. And the whole point was, that's why there's no refunds. If you sign up for the race and you can't make it, or we cancel the race, like, we just can't afford to refund your money. And it was so just matter of fact, like this is our bottom line. And so you really, as the person who paid the money, or maybe wasn't going to get a refund if I didn't make it, it made me go, oh, well, duh. You know, and so if we can come up with some of those specifics for, these are the realities of what money has gone out for us in order to provide this ticket to you, all of a sudden it may be like, oh, well, of course they can't refund my money or the full amount. So maybe we can think of terms of, you know, as we keep putting these pieces together, being very specific with that language on our websites or in our brochures as to why that's prohibitive to us. Tiana, go ahead.
Hey everyone, Tiana from Carthage. So actually, Karen touched a little bit what I was thinking about is we see more people buying last minute. Just because they don't want to spend the money and then wait for that refund to come in, or a partial refund. And so what I wanted to add to that is something we've been discussing about, and I think should be a next topic at some point. Obviously, we don't have the resources right now, but we've been discussing, you know, if we do open and we have social distancing in our venues, how do we do bathrooms and lobbies? And if everyone's going to buy last minute and they're not even going to do, you know, online so they can prevent having all those additional fees, how do we have box office? I mean, you're having now lines out the door if you're doing 6 feet and getting them all in before the performance starts at that point. So yeah, we're looking at all our manuals, you know, and redoing everything and trying to figure out how do we go into the new normal with no map or no guide. I mean, yeah, so that's what I wanted to add, and maybe that can be a session at some point, is our facilities and what do we do with plan A, B, and C.
Thanks, Tiana. And I think it's going to be many years of training a whole new mentality of patron because, you know, it's just like, my patrons don't come on time the way it is. So it's just like, you know, it's like, now if you're coming late and trying to buy a ticket at the door, oh my gosh, nightmare. Lindsay, go ahead.
I think another question that we've had too in the refund discussion is, let's say safer at home is lifted, we can have gatherings of however many people we want, but someone decides the week before that they don't feel safe coming into our space, if they've made that personal choice. Do you still refund them because it's not, we wouldn't be required to, we don't have to move the show? So that's kind of a discussion that we're having with our board too, is how will we handle that? Because it's likely going to happen. And it might even happen because somebody gets a cold and that's the excuse they want to use to get the refund back. I mean, in general, I feel like our patrons are pretty honest and they're not trying to like scam us or anything, but it could happen. So just trying to figure out how we want to handle those kinds of refund requests when we actually can do the show.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And like we've talked about, our goal is to make the experience the most comfortable and relaxing for the patrons. So if they just don't feel like it's been enough time and they're just not comfortable coming out, you know, how do we honor that and still, you know, not go bankrupt? And go ahead.
I'm not sure this is a good analogy, but I'll say it anyway. You probably all have been reading, you may have all been reading about what's happening in places like Georgia, where the governor has opened up a lot of small businesses, nail salons, hairdressers, and so the scuttlebutt out there is that some of that is motivated by not having to pay unemployment for those people, because every state is going to go broke from the unemployment monies that they're going to have to pay. But the question is, if you're an employee at a nail salon and you don't feel that it's safe for you to go to work, you're kind of screwed, because you can't apply for unemployment because you have a job, but yet you don't want to do that. You don't want to expose yourself possibly. So I think that's related to what we're talking about, because I think it will happen. I think it's very, very possible that people will say, well, you know, I just don't really want to go, so you have to give me my money back. So I think that's worth a lot. I think that's worth more discussion by the presenters, so that there can be some kind of understanding of what your policies are. Because I think that that's something that's going to happen, since we don't know if there's going to be a resurgence or what's going to happen once we get to the fall. Dr. Fauci says there will be, the virus will come back. You know, I think that's a really good thing to keep discussing, because I think it is a reality. It will be a reality, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thanks, Anne. Yeah. And, you know, along with that too, the other thing that sort of came up in our last discussion is, you know, if you have 1,000-seat theater and you're near sold out, and you can still go on with your show, but you have a 500-person cap, who do you call and say, well, you can't come, the other 500 of you can come? I mean, I don't probably have that problem, because my capacity is 388, but for those who have bigger venues, like, you know, obviously, like I said, you can still go ahead with the show, but you have to like lottery pick 500 out of your 1,000 people to say, sorry, you're out. I can only serve half of this audience. Anybody given thought to that has bigger venues? Stephanie, of course you have. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, we have 2,000 seats, and we had TicketStar, who does our ticketing, did kind of a rescaling based on like their assumed social distancing guidelines. That brings our capacity down to like 623 or something, so it's less than half. And we did have a concert that moved. It was a Christian artist from an area church to the Widener, so that they could have a bigger capacity to work with their reschedule in fall. So they've already sold 900 tickets, and they were hoping to put the remaining like 1,100 on sale, but we've asked them to wait until July or August so we can assess kind of what the situation is. Their shows in October, but we don't want to oversell the house. So we're just making them kind of hold still at 900 seats issued, and then we'll take it from there. If we're all clear and we can sell the rest of the house, great. But for right now, we're just kind of holding off. So.
It's a good plan. Yeah. And for me, I was wondering if I start my ticketing, even though like I said, I have a smaller house, but do I only put so much on sale at one time? You know, I mean, do I block off, you know, I'll accept maybe 100. And when I open up my sales, just start with that. And if that fills, just say, start a waiting list. I mean, has anybody thought about that route as far as like, because I'm based on the last discussion that we had, I'm pretty much going to go with sending out my brochure in May, end of May. And then if we are able to reopen and get back in the box office, you know, have sales starting in June. But I'm just wondering if I should hold anything back initially until, you know, August. Anybody think about that? Kathleen?
I think what our plan is based on when our brochure is going out, when we're doing our subscription period, we've delayed it enough that hopefully we'll have some more information. We will, you know, send out our renewals and then our sponsor tickets, which would be about 250 of our seats. And then we'll hold off on selling individual tickets until, I mean, maybe August 1st, which doesn't give us a lot of time before our first performance, but that would give us enough time if we, didn't have to, if we weren't able to sell anymore, or if 250 was the cap or whatever it might be. Hopefully we would have some more information to know how to move forward. So I think just coincidentally, we've delayed our timelines enough that maybe we'll be able to address that just based on our timing.
Yep.
If we don't have more information by, July, August, then I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do people think about if there is a resurgence and let's say, I've got a show in October and I've sold 300 tickets, and we're not necessarily in full quarantine, but the governor comes out and says, you know what, we're going to scale this back and we can only you can't meet more than 50 people. What do you guys think? How would you handle saying to the other 250, you can't come, or would you just cancel the show? Would you postpone the show? I mean, I guess, I'm just kind of thinking, what would we have options, but what do we think the best option would be for a situation or a scenario like that, where all of a sudden have a cap imposed on us again? And we've already got, people ticketed, and assuming that those folks, again, we're probably going to be dealing with 1,000 refund calls in that situation, but assuming that there's still 100 people that want to come if the show goes on, do we go on with the show and just have a lottery for the other 50 that can't come? Do you, again, postpone, try to push it back to a later date and then just keep everybody ticketed? Any thoughts on that? I know it's like we're just shooting in the dark here. Tiana, go ahead.
I'm kind of hoping that there's going to be some pretty big events coming up in August and September in Milwaukee that are kind of going to be our guides of what's going to happen. So like Summerfest is now in September. The DNC is in August. Milwaukee's commencement is now in August. So a lot of the festivals for the summer is in September now. So, and I know you're talking about October, but I think there's going to be a lot of last minute. And that's just what's going to happen. But I think they're going to be our guides of how can we start? Is it even available to open? I know they're much larger, obviously. And so, I mean, even though with guest artists, I have moved a lot to spring instead. I have still one in October. Being part of a campus, we still have all our theater shows. Our largest event is our Christmas festival in December. And so, I mean, we don't want to, I'd like to stay optimistic with a plan. Oh, my connection's unstable. Can you still hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I'd like to stay with our plan A, but I want to start thinking about our plan B and C options. So we are going to move forward with having ticket insurance with our subscriptions. Our subscriptions, we're going to do more of if you buy more shows or do a pick, you get more off the original price, but more so, like we were always doing 10%, and now we're going to look at more 20-30. And a payment plan option. But I really do think those large events are going to help us kind of guide, because I really do think people are going to start buying like more closer to the date. Because I mean, look at what big events like our Pfizer Forum is happening right now. They're doing rain dates, and people are getting really upset because Ticketmaster is not refunding. They're just moving their ticket to that new date. And they're going to continue doing that. And I think people are just going to be worrisome that they're just going to lose all of the fees on it. So I don't know. I mean, what's really difficult is I wish we really just knew what's happening 4 months in advance. Just, can we make a decision and go with it, even though I'm not going to like what that decision is. So I don't know. We'll see what I mean, pretty much I don't know about around other areas, but in the Milwaukee area, a lot is canceled this summer, like a lot. And that's kind of scary. And then they're pushing everything in the fall, which is making me nervous because now I'm competing with so much around our area with all of these events coming through, and people are really going to want the arts and to be alive and be there in person because of so much mental health issues that are happening right now, being cabin fever. I don't know. And one of the sessions from the boot camp that I really liked is them talking about the PTSD and medical trauma. Even if you don't have coronavirus, and even if you don't know someone, it's the fear of being back. And how do we make people feel comfortable in our spaces again and not, I mean, I don't know. But anyway, so I know that was like 3 topics in like 5 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, I'll put the link in the notes for this one, but Tiana sent me the link. I think it was right after I kind of pooped out. But there was a nice document about just people's psychology with this. And, you've got a whole segment of people that may or may not have gotten the virus and know they got it from being in a group. So there's that, mental barrier to get past for patrons. And then those, like you say, we've just been quarantined and isolated for so long that coming back out is going to feel different. And, for a lot of people, it's still going to be a similar to a PTSD, situation. So that there's some really good stuff in there to also consider. And again, all of this comes back to then how we message and how we market and communicate to our patrons. It has to be, so specific and so transparent and empathetic. I think, that we need to be understanding of their comfort levels. And, and one of the things too, I don't know if we want to get into it with the time we have left, was, what the new normal will look like, for people coming into our venues in the fall. Are they going to be put off if my entire staff is masked? Or is that going to make them feel safer? And who, how do you survey the crowd to find out what will bring people peace of mind and some of those things? Anybody have thoughts on, what, again, I know a lot of mine will probably be dictated by what the college decides, we're going to do, if everybody needs to be masked or whatever. But we can always certainly communicate that we're doing extra cleaning and that we're going to be cleaning, before the show and after the show, and cleaning bathrooms, and even, having the seats kind of sectioned off so that there's a little bit more social distancing. But, like the mask thing, and just, having people around one another. And then somebody brought up last session, having thermometers and taking people's temperatures as they come in to your venue, some of these things. Again, some people, if they're coming to a show, might feel more secure, and some people might feel more put off. I guess it's kind of it's similar to how you feel about airport security. For me, it doesn't bother me if they want to, take me aside, pat me down, look through all my stuff, because I'm, I've got nothing to hide. And it doesn't affect me. It doesn't upset me, because I know that they're doing their job to keep me safe. But for other people, they feel that's a huge invasion of their privacy. They're very upset by it. It ruins their whole trip, So it's kind of becomes down to a personality thing. And so how do we, serve all of our patrons with what we're doing? Any thoughts on that stuff? Stephanie, go ahead.
I have a colleague at a venue in Texas, and they've kind of already, as an operation, come up with a really comprehensive plan for dealing with this when they do get going again. And I don't know that it's realistic for most venues, but they've already planned to have bathroom attendants that essentially would be wiping off all the bathroom surfaces as patrons are using it. Also having custodians in the lobby spaces, wiping down railings and all of that. They've reconfigured their bar lines and how that's going to operate. So they're already kind of putting in motion some of those, you know, again, they feel like just the presence of, you know, custodial support is what's going to offer the peace of mind to their patrons. But again, that's a pretty costly endeavor for most venues. So,
Yep. Thanks. Any other comments? We've got about 10 minutes left, and we've kind of we've kind of pulled the thread even more, and so we've got a lot still to discuss, and we've unraveled a lot. Let's see, we've touched on a lot, though. I think this has been a really good discussion. Let's see. Oh, good. I have some hands. Sally and then Deanna.
I had an interesting phone call yesterday. I haven't been contacted by any agents at this point, and we have a show scheduled in January, the end of January, for The Greatest Love of All, which is actually coming from Australia. And she contacted me yesterday to see how things were going and if we had any cancellations yet for fall, because they have canceled all of their performances in the States for the fall. And they're starting their season now in January. And I just found it interesting that, you know, internationally, I guess they're pretty concerned about coming over here and that type of thing. I have not contacted any of my agents for our fall shows. We do have 5 scheduled beginning October 1st through December 10th. And I'm a little concerned. Is anybody else contacting people to kind of set up an alternative date? Again, we're booked for 2021, so we'd be looking at the 21-22 season. But I'm feeling like if people are not going to be coming, we really financially cannot afford to like cut our numbers any more than we already estimate. So just kind of wondering what people are thinking there, or if they've talked to any other agents.
Thanks, Sally. Deanna?
Lonnie, I don't have I like Sally, what she discussed with there, so hopefully that continues. Sorry, mine's a little bit different. I just wanted to suggest, I really liked Amy's idea that Wisconsin presenters, I mean, obviously we can't all do the exact same thing because different size venues, some of our schools, we have to take, some are owned by cities. And so like, we have to take direction from those. But I like that idea of that collaboration. So it looks like the safety across campus, or sorry, across the state, and that everyone is trying to work together in that capacity. So I don't know if that is something, I know we're looking at, since our conference this summer is canceled, but can we have, you know, some kind of virtual aspects, kind of like we're doing right now, but at a bigger capacity of some sort. And though June might seem really late to have that collaboration and a message, but I don't think we're going to know more even by then. I know as our campus, we do take everything day by day, but I mean, the latest I'm hearing from a lot of campus across the state is they're trying to make some decisions by mid to late June for fall. And I think that will really drive what we can move forward with, unfortunately. I mean, I'm trying to always have like a plan A, plan B, plan C. And once I know what that plan is, I got to go to that plot chart and continue another plan A, plan B, plan C. But I think we just need to show that we're working together, we're sticking together. I think our video showed that. But I think we need to continue moving forward in that way, because we'll never go back to what we called normal. We're always going to go into a new normal, but we need to stay in the optimistic way. How can we be creative? We're creative people. How can we be more creative in what we're going to present? So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something we can add in a conversation coming up, or if that's something can be one of our sessions for summer. How do we lead that? I really don't know, but I think it's a really great idea.
I agree. I think if the WPN as an organization can put out maybe not guidelines, but recommendations, so that it shows, you know, because like you've said, every venue is going to have to tailor things, you know, to their own needs. But if we can have something that's broad enough to at least kind of capture the scope of recommendations, or what, you know, the broad community of the Wisconsin Presenters Network is doing, and that is a consistent message. I think that's very good for us to have, that will help govern, you know, all of the presenters in the state. So got it down. We'll figure out how to best do that, if it's like a town hall thing or a slightly longer session, and try to engage, you know, everybody in the WPN. That's a great idea. Anybody back to Sally's or on this as well? Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, in response to Sally, Sally, I would recommend that you just reach out to the shows that you have in the fall and just check in with them. I've had several of them reach out to me, but I've also reached out to them just to check in, see how the tours are going, because honestly, several of them are several of them are evaluating just the status of how everybody's doing and if they may need to reschedule in the spring. So I don't think it hurts just to check in, see how they're doing, see if they're looking to reschedule, and then just let them know how you're doing and how you're feeling. That way it opens the line of communication.
Yeah, because even we've talked a little bit about, you know, the international artists may have physical barriers to visas or other travel things, but even within domestic travel, you know, I've got David Osborne in September. He's coming in from Las Vegas. Is he going to feel comfortable getting on a plane? You know, and I don't know. You know, and other artists that are even traveling domestically, they may or may not have a comfort level of still, you know, traveling at that point. So that may impact, you know, again, going back to then our contracts and our force majeure clauses. But so yeah, there's all of that as well. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Any other, you know, final burning questions along the lines of what we've been talking about? I definitely think the next steps would be to give us all some time with that document that Anne sent out, and then, you know, kind of come back in a week or two to keep talking more guidelines and some of those nitty-gritty details about, you know, what reopening looks like and things like that. And again, so many of these things, you know, I understand we've got a lot of questions and a lot of discussion and very few answers because we just don't know. And so the one good thing about us is we're all creative individuals. So when we have to just sort of figure it out on the fly, hopefully we come up with some good ideas and are able to pivot. One question real quick that Sandy threw out, has anybody surveyed your audience yet? I mean, I would imagine audience surveys they're going to have the same responses as we have. I don't know how I'm going to feel. Ask me in September. But has anybody done formal surveys or anything yet of their audience to see where the audiences are feeling? Not yet. No. I imagine it's just, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, the patrons we're all in the same boat and just dealing with kind of a one day at a time thing. So, I mean, if I got surveyed by, you know, a venue and they said, would you buy a ticket in September? I don't know. I just don't know. So, Emily, the document I'm referring to is, Anne just sent it out at 10 o'clock to the WPN listserv, and it is I wrote it down. It's a Event Safety Alliance Guide to Reopening, and it's a 26-page document that I just glanced at before this meeting. And so I think if we can all sit and kind of pick that apart and then kind of come back with our thoughts and feedback on that, that will help us all with some more of these specific things.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. I'm glad you asked. So we're at 11:29. So I think unless there's any final comments or questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up this part 2 of our discussion, our probably ever continuing discussion till we get into the year 2022. So let me go ahead and stop the recording.